Hello, I'm Kate Williamson and welcome to Keep It Clean, live from the London Cleaning Show. This is a podcast from Jangro that explores the evolving landscape of the cleaning and hygiene industry and its impact on sustainability, regulation and workplace efficiency. Today we're focusing on something really exciting, the Jangro Rebrand, which has been officially launched for the first time at the Cleaning Show. This marks the first major rebrand for the business in 12 years, and it reflects our commitment to innovation and progress. To break down this creative process from the initial brief to the execution, I'm joined by Gareth Evans, Group Managing Director at Cogent, who are a leading brand and creative agency. Now, Cogent was tasked with developing a bold, future-focused identity that sets Jangro apart from its competitors, while reinforcing our reputation as the most progressive cleaning, hygiene and catering supply group across the UK and Europe. That's a big challenge, Gareth. So let's get straight into it. So can you start by telling us a little bit more about Cogent?
Yep, of course.
And your role within the Jangro rebrand?
Of course. Cogent's actually a group of creative businesses, and we help a number of brands and businesses from a range of different sectors with challenges that extend from kind of brand strategy and brand creation, as we have done here, through into advertising, digital marketing, PR, social media, the whole gamut.
Really
if you like.
broad, yeah.
We've been going 95 years, so in our world we're slightly unusual to be still sort of leading the charge as an independent business.
Absolutely.
For that long, but it's always been built on helping clients to look at what's happening in their sector and rise above it, push beyond it, do something new, which was exactly what this challenge was all about.
Okay. Well, I would imagine, I mean, not you personally for 95 years, because clearly you're not 95, but I would imagine that you and Cogent have worked on many branding projects over the years.
Yes, we have,
When you got the brief for Jangro, what immediately stood out?
So several things. The first thing that leapt off the page was that this is a business that is hugely passionate about a lot of things, right? So it's passionate about its core business, it's passionate about its members, passionate about the industry within which it operates and the opportunities there are, about innovation and forward progress, obviously about sustainability. All of these things kind of leapt out of the brief, alongside the fact that the business hadn't been through a sort of rebrand or a brand refresh for something like 12 years, I think.
Was quite a long time, actually.
And was ready for it.
Yeah.
That sort of coincided with a couple of other things, the big office move that's recently happened, and this building tide of change across the industry that Jangro has every right to be at the sort of the forefront of. And these things were sort of all coalesced together into a very exciting sounding brief to an agency like us that go, right, that is a fantastic challenge. Let's tackle that and see what we can come up with.
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, when you're doing something like that, there are obviously going to be a lot of challenges that you come across. So, can you tell me about some of those challenges?
Well, the place we started was to look at where the Jangro brand had come from, and I don't mean just the logo. I mean the story of the business and its place within the industry and how people had understood it as it had grown over the years. But also we looked back into some of our history and looked at some of the projects we'd worked on that sort of felt like they were in similar territories.
Okay.
So, whether that is specifically in cleaning, right? So cleaning products. So we've worked with SC Johnson and we've worked with Henkel domestic cleaning product, but also looking at this world of sustainability where we've done quite a lot of work with various businesses in kind of adjacent categories. So everything from the National Energy Systems operator through to the Confederation of Paper Industry, all looking at this sort of sustainability messaging. We also looked at businesses that are built around a kind of a membership model. So we work with a business called Unitas, which is, I guess, the equivalent of Jangro, but in food and drink wholesale. We've worked with member organisations, so the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and a couple of others. So it's a bit of a melting pot of what can we learn from all of those different areas, both about their market dynamics, about the role of creativity, how we communicate effectively with various stakeholders in those organisations. So that was the start, really, put all those in a melting pot. I think your question was about challenges, though. And I suppose the only real challenge right at the start was just that, this is a business that we had to properly understand. It's quite nuanced. It's got its own stakeholder groups and its own structures, and it was important that we understood all of that and could immerse ourselves in it in order to properly then understand what the role the brand was going to play and how we could help take that forward, sort of thing.
And obviously what you're doing, I mean, you'll do this and obviously you'll step away and move on to the next project, whereas you know that's going to be now with us for your work is going to be with us for, you know. It
has to live and breathe, it has to work.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about, here's some lovely designs, cheerio. There has to be a strategy and a rationale, and there has to be a sense that it will have longevity and breadth, and that it doesn't just stretch across the current product range or the current range of initiatives that Jangro has in play. This is about how can it stretch over time to do all of those things that it's going to build into the business, but using this brand that can live and breathe over time. So so lots to think about.
Absolutely. And now that you're out of all of the processes, you know, when you first sort of came here yesterday and saw it, you know, what are your thoughts on it now that you can see it away from all of the, you know, from all of the creative processes, and you're just looking at it as a brand?
Well, so there's a couple of things there. One is, it's always one of my favourite moments in any project, which is when you see the work lifted off the bit of paper or off the laptop screen and now out in the wild. That's always the most rewarding moment. And it's seeing it work, it's seeing it doing its job and actually being applied. You know, everything from a vinyl on the side of the Airstream here to the branding of the coffee stand to seeing all the products mocked up and all that, which is so you can start to see it really working and coming to life. And I think as well as us making a creative recommendation for this, and creativity is almost limitless, we could go anywhere with it, but we also knew that it has a functional job to do. This is a brand that needs to help shelf stand out, and we need to help members and customers and end users to navigate the range, and it's a complex range with lots of SKUs in it. So the attributes, the distinct brand attributes, they need to work hard. So seeing it actually applied, off the page and out in the wild, sort of proves almost that it's doing what we wanted it to do. Which
absolutely.
Is cool.
And I think, I mean, certainly from my point of view, this feels, when I'm looking at the brand now, it feels completely natural. It feels like we've had this.
Yeah, well, that's
it absolutely feels completely in sync with everything that we're doing and what we're going to be doing.
It's nice to hear you say that. I think we've had lots of conversations with lots of people, and I mean, we've heard on the grapevine there have been a couple of people whose first reaction was, "Oh, that's change. I'm not sure how we feel about change," and that's absolutely fine. And being completely honest, part of our original pitch was to say we expect some people are going to feel uncomfortable about this initially, and in a way, if we don't have that, then we haven't pushed things forward enough. In order to change, we need to push things forward. Our only hope is that we've done a good enough job from a brand point of view that over time, for those people, it will start to feel like natural, and it will feel okay, and we can work with it, and it makes sense. But by and large, the reaction has been, this absolutely feels like the natural and most positive next step for the business. So that's been lovely to hear. Yeah,
completely organic. It's obviously our first major rebrand for 12 years. Do you believe, I mean, in terms of a timescale, do you believe that there is a timescale that people need to work to before they rebrand? Do you think it's absolutely necessary?
It's a really good question. I think it varies from sector to sector, from brand to brand. The only thing I would say is that two things. One is, I think it's incumbent on whoever is the guardian of a brand, whether that's the in-house marketing team, whether it's the members, whether it's their agency, to constantly be making sure and looking at what's happening in the immediate kind of market environment, and taking inspiration from other markets to understand how are things evolving, what's changing, what's happening, so that should the moment arise when it's time to look at the brand again, whether that's a complete overhaul or a refresh, you're not left behind, and you make sure you kind of keep tabs on what's happening. But the other thing to say is that, as I've said, this is something that needs to live and breathe and have its own life and be able to extend. We hope what we've done is equip with the team internally with sufficient brand guidelines, the guardrails and the tools that they need to then go and play with this thing and give it life, so that it doesn't die in a corner or get old-fashioned. There's enough there for people to keep it fresh and work with it within the guidelines, but to keep it feeling like an immediate and fresh and relevant brand in the market.
Absolutely. How did you ensure that the whole rebrand ties in with us as a very forward-thinking, innovative company? Was there anything specific that you kind of latched onto? And
so there were two or three things. One, I mean, the sustainability message is extremely clear, and that jumped out of the brief, and we knew that was absolutely critical. And so going into the detail of it, one of the things that we always develop as part of one of these branding processes is colorways, right? So a selection of colors that the brand operates within.
Love the colors.
And
big fan of the colors.
So the core colors are
Yeah.
our forest green and our leaf green, which is a big move forward for Jangro, who comes from a world of blues and reds and greys. But obviously that has a big nod to the sustainability messaging within it. But very quickly, a brand is not very flexible, especially a brand with this many products to be concerned with, if it only has 2 variants of green, right? So what we then did is build this secondary colour palette, which is a very vibrant, very bright colour palette, which feels very modern, it feels very current, it feels very flexible, and it enables that, stand out on shelf or that navigating the range. So that was one of the things we did. I think the other thing was we looked at, as part of our immersion in the kind of creative development process, we looked at 2 almost distinctive brand assets, if you like. So one was, Jangro's been known for having the thing called the Jangro Rose, right, which has been a mark or an icon that's been built out of a circle of the letter J.
Yeah.
We've evolved that, we've taken it forward, we've brought the J's in closer together, and that's created what we're now calling the ping.
The ping.
Yeah, the Jangro ping. And that's effectively something where we've taken inspiration from packaging and advertising and communications across the world of cleaning, both domestic and sort of commercial and industrial, where this note of a job well done, which is the ping of clean at the end of a job well done, you see it a lot, almost subliminally, but we wanted Jangro to have its own version of that felt like the full stop at the end of Jangro. So when you've worked with Jangro, what do you get? You get a ping of clean, a job well done. And then the other thing was to think about, one of the things that's prevalent across all cleaning is that there is continuous motion. So any type of cleaning, you'll find some continuous motion in play. In fact, looking around all the stands at the show here, there's lots of things moving, aren't there? So we've introduced this notion of continuous movement, both in something that we're calling the swoosh, which is a device that we've been able to introduce that allows us to frame imagery, to use colour to denote product ranges and that sort of thing. But it gives a movement and a modernity to all of the designs. And then even within the word mark Jangro itself, we've chosen and developed a new font that has lots of movement in it. Now, this is very much getting into brand agency territory here, where the average puncher on the street might not notice, or at least it might be subliminal. But it's very deliberate that what we've done is we've built movement and forward motion into the name Jangro, so it almost becomes synonymous with progress.
Moving forward. Talking about the colours, they look incredibly contemporary. But just a beautiful range of palettes, because a lot of the chemicals are obviously all different colours, but obviously we do have to stick to a colour range in terms of people knowing where to clean, etc. It's an incredible process. I mean, it's when did it start? I'm only really aware of it. I was only sort of privy to what was happening really in the last week or so. Right, okay. So it's brand new for me, but obviously you've been working with this for quite some time.
We have, I think I look back and I think the original brief came through about July time last year.
Right, okay.
And there's a bit of backwards and forwards in terms of working with Heather and the team to sort of establish that, first of all, we're the agency that she wants to, because you talk to a few to see how we all feel and check each other out a little bit. And very, very fortunately, Heather decided that we were the agency that she wanted to work with, and we were delighted about that.
Absolutely.
So having been through that bit of the process, we've already got our heads into the requirement of the brief and a bit about the business. But then it's really diving in, and it's incumbent on us to really understand everything.
And it's the nuts and bolts of everything.
Exactly. But then also build in the sort of developing that creative process and taking the inspiration from movement and pings and then developing that into a number of different routes that we internally then go through, and we rationalise and we assess and discuss and well, that won't work here, but what if we move this over to, how can we do this and incorporate elements of that in here, and how do we do? So what we eventually then came back to present to the team with was 2 different routes, right? So we'd come up with 2 different ways you could treat this. Both to us felt they had merit, and they were both equally kind of brought across this modernity and this innovation and the sustainability piece. But they were distinct. As often happens, the team liked both of them. So our job then was to see if there were a way that we could perhaps incorporate elements of both. Which at the outset is never easy, but over time, once you've lived with it, you can sort of make that happen. And very happy to say that then went in front of the committee, and the committee were very happy with it. And then you go into the sort of rollout. Obviously, you've got the core elements, you know what the core brand looks like. Now you've got to make sure that works on a little label this size and or on a social media post or somewhere in a catalogue, right? So it's about rolling it all out through each of those places and expressions and touch points so that we know it will work. So there's lots of stages to the process, from that kind of first creative inspiration right to the sort of rollout and delivery.
And now, as I say, we talked about it before, but are you happy with the final result? Because I mean, you know, as I say, from my point of view, the minute I saw it, it was like, that's it.
So we're all super proud of it and have really enjoyed working on it. Today, actually, we have a sort of a monthly catch up as a business. I'm not there because I'm here, but we have a monthly catch up as a business where we talk about lots of stuff that's going on. But we like to share the best of the work that we've been doing recently, and the Jangro brand project featured on that today. And I was able to log in on my phone and watch that being presented, and had a moment of pride to see that project come to fruition, and everyone really happy with the work we've done. So
I mean, the feedback that I've had at the show is, you know, it's only been positive feedback.
Good. Oh, great.
And certainly from myself and everyone at our head office that we saw this for the first time last week. It's been so well received. Fabulous. So a huge thank you to everyone at Cogent that's got us to this place, and this place will obviously take us forward.
Well, thank you, because
we
know the business is very precious to everybody, you know, and you're entrusting that business to us, and we're grateful, we appreciate it. So thank you, it's been fun to work on.
Excellent. Well, Gareth, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your insights on this brand new rebrand.
Yes, very happy to.
It's been fascinating to hear about the creative journey for the brand and the transformation, and as I say, absolutely everyone within the company is really thrilled with it.
Great.
That's it for this episode of Keep It Clean, live from the London Cleaning Show. So thank you for listening, and we would love to hear your thoughts on the new brand, and I hope they're as positive as ours.